Before we start, I just wanted to thank you for tuning in. And if you're enjoying my content and would like to support, then you can subscribe to my YouTube channel or leave a comment. Or if you're listening, then you can rate and review the One Day Podcast on Apple Podcast. This stuff really helps and allows my content to reach a wider audience.
I think that the fact that there's just so much to do, right? So telling the founder stories, making sure that we're building a platform that gives them kind of a global stage to really write a second narrative or another narrative for the region, to give them the opportunities that other people in other parts of the world that have more access to capital have, and to showcase that we can build anything from here.
This is the One Day Podcast. My name is Omar Al-Majali, and each week I am bringing you some of the most accomplished and inspiring minds in the Middle East and the world to give you a glimpse of their professional life and pull back the curtain a bit on the real and untold story of their success, to inspire you and help you learn from those who have walked the walk so you could move one day closer to your own goals. Hope you enjoy this episode. So this is the One Day Podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Our guest of the week is an incredible woman with a phenomenal record of achievement and business success, and that would be Noor Sweid, who today is the only Arab woman in the Middle East running a venture capital fund as the founder. That VC fund is called Global Ventures. It's based in Dubai, and it invests in growth stage startups, mainly operating in the tech space. Noor was recognized in the world's top 50 women in tech by Forbes, Arabian Business 100 most powerful Arab women list, and she has received the Arab Women Award for Finance. And prior to founding Global Ventures, Noor joined her family business back in 2005, which was an interior contracting company called Deepa. And only within a few years, she managed to scale up the size of that business by tenfold and even led it to an IPO on the London Stock Exchange and NASDAQ Dubai, achieving over $1 billion in valuation, which was a deal that was first of its kind in the region. And around that time, when she was leading her family business and scoring those big wins, Noor was also an entrepreneur and was starting a yoga studio business called Zen Yoga, which had later become one of the largest chains of yoga and Pilates studios in the Middle East. And today, Noor is an active board member and the chairwoman of the Middle East Venture Capital Association. She's also the director of MIT Sloan. She holds a bachelor's degree in finance economics from Boston College and an MBA from MIT Sloan. A lot of knowledge, experience, and themes that we're hoping to unpack with our guests today. Welcome, Noor.
Thank you for having me, Omar.
Thank you for being here. Great to have you. I'm excited for this one. How have you been?
I've been well. Alhamdulillah, it's been a very, very busy year, and getting busier towards the end of the year as everyone's trying to catch up and do double the year during post COVID.
I bet. Noor, when someone reads your profile, literally looks for Noor Sweid, I mean, you cannot be impressed. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of roles that you played, and there's a lot of roles that you continue to play, a lot of impact you created along the way, which is honestly is really inspirational and incredible. How do you really feel about that? Like, do you ever feel fulfilled, or are you someone who always has the bug of, what am I going to do next?
I think it's important to always stop and be in the present moment and appreciate the opportunities you've been given and really reflect on, the small wins along the way. But you have to celebrate the small wins. They keep you going. They keep the team going. We just had our AGM, our annual general meeting last week, with all of our investors from around the world flying in, all of our founders from the region being there, and making those connections and watching that chemistry happen is really, that gives you enough fuel for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
So it's important to really pause, reflect, appreciate what we've been able to achieve as Global Ventures. At the same time, it's important to think, what more can we do? And we're so blessed to be in this position that we are able to make some change and create some impact. So, what's next?
Yeah, not only as Global Ventures, but I mean as Noor Sweid, with everything that you've been able to do ever since you moved from Boston and your family business, IPOing that. It's just a lot of things that you were able to accomplish, like the yoga studio.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Did you ever see yourself walking down this path, or do you feel like you've just stumbled on it and the journey unfolded organically?
I think that the best opportunities in life are those that are surprises. So I moved back to the region with Buzal out of Sloan. Before my MBA, I was consulting in the US, and post MBA, I was going to go back to consulting. And then I had 3 weeks in between my first project and second project. And kind of went into the office just to help out. And 3 weeks turned to 3 months, turned to many years. But I think you have to keep an open mind, because it would have been very easy for me, like, no, I'm a consultant. I'm not an operator, and I'm going to stay a consultant. Instead, it was much more, okay, let's explore. And having that, open mindset, that curiosity, that willingness to learn and to help, and the desire to do something beyond just you
Yeah.
is very important in life, because then that makes you open to possibilities.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with this idea and concept of not labeling yourself or boxing yourself, and instead exploring what's out there and exploring what you could do and the capacities that you have and the potential that you have in you, versus just limiting yourself to one industry and one sector, thinking that's all you can do. And so you studied in Boston, which, by the way, I studied in Boston, finance economics as well. So it has a special place in my heart. I do miss it. Maybe not the cold.
It's a great city. It's a great city.
It really, really is. So after Boston, you moved into your family business. You led it, and only within a few years, you were able to basically scale it up by tenfold. You took it to IPO, more than $1 billion in valuation, on one of the biggest international stock exchanges in the world, which was unprecedented in 2008 and for a MENA company. So I'm going to ask the very basic question: is like, how and what? And I know, there is one thing, there isn't a simple answer, but if we do, like, if we take the Pareto principle, the 80% impact from 20% of input and focus, what would you say were those 20% of things that you did over those few years?
So first of all, keep in mind, my father had started this business in 1996. So I came in 2005 into a company that was indeed 9 years old. It was 1,000 people. It was in 6 markets, very high turnover. So it was a very successful company at the time. And like all companies, it had its challenges. And one of the typical challenges in interior contracting, or all contracting, is cash flow. And so as you take bigger and bigger projects, and you get paid on percentage of completion. And so obviously, if you're in the interiors world, then you get paid mostly at the end of your project. In the meantime, you have to fund a large part of the project. And so you're genuinely in the region, struggling with your cash flows. And so one of the things we did right at the beginning after I joined was we did a private placement, and we raised money for the company, diluted the family. We put independence on the board. So I structured the governance for the company, which in 2005, very few family businesses had kind of governance with independence on the board, and really took a mindset of, how do you institutionalize this? That was my role in the company, was think strategically. If we want to grow globally, how can we do that with relationships that we have with our clients, like Turner? So we went into Singapore with Turner, who was our client here, who in Singapore was working on the Marina Bay Sands. So really, first of all, the capital. Without the capital, growth would have been impossible, which is why now I do what I do, because I find that VC, we've invested in 41 companies, and hopefully if they grow and they're successful, we can be enablers for that. So as capital, strategic capital. And the second part of it is, think strategically how you can grow globally. Sometimes it just takes that confidence and that belief that you can do it, because at the time we were very regional, and the relationships, right? And so again, taking those learnings, which is why now our firm is called Global Ventures. It's not because we invest globally. It's because we want to back entrepreneurs that are going to grow globally. And if you can do it for interior contracting, which is very much boots on the ground, we went from 1,000 people in 2005 to 9,500 in 2008.
That's insane.
You can do that for contracting. It means you can do it for tech. And we've seen repeatedly that same success story. We piggybacked off our clients. We got into new markets. 8 of our founders are now global companies. So we really think about, how can you grow global companies from the region? So the learnings there were really capital precedes growth, or expedited growth. And if you dilute, who cares? Right? So a lot of founders now are hung up on dilution. Whereas when I went into the family business and was working with my father and the team, it was raise the money, dilute yourself by half. Right? Put boards, put independence, put governance, because processes and policies enable growth. So most people think that, the governance in a family business takes power away from the CEO, the founder, the family. I argue it gives you power, because then everybody's doing things the way that you've designed them, no matter where they are. And if you genuinely believe that the way that you've designed a process or a policy or the way you operate is going to be best, and that's how you want to build your business, then you want everybody following that. And so that's why I believe that governance precedes growth, capital precedes growth, and putting them together with the right strategic investors enables you to grow globally. And finally, I think it's the core belief that you can build something global. So I think, when I came in, even the board said, why would you go to Singapore? It's really about Saudi. Why would, and it was very much no, but if we can compete globally, you can build something really fundamentally large, and that makes a big difference in the world. And it's the same with our founders. A lot of time we speak to our founders and they're really focused on growing in the region. And we say, well, what's wrong with Europe? What's wrong with the US? And we see enough entrepreneurs around the world that we know our founders are just as good, if not better, right? It's just about that fundamental belief in themselves and the market and investors' belief in them, that you can be a global founder from this part of the world.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned belief, because honestly, I was going to ask you about this question. I'm curious as to whether you were someone who had always believed in themselves and would always push themselves, or do you think maybe that IPO was a milestone in your life where you thought to yourself, I've always believed in myself, but now, wow, I believe I can do bigger things, and that glass ceiling kind of went up? Or
no,
no?
No, I was raised without the concept of a glass ceiling.
Hello.
So I was still raised in a generation where, I don't think that term had been coined when I was young, and I never saw it because even at Boston College, right, we were minority female.
Yeah.
Then I went to consulting in the U.S. and we were, I guess, 30% female in my analyst class. And then I did my business school at Sloan, which at the time was 28% female. And then I went into Booz Allen consulting, and then I went to contracting, which is less than 5% female. Right. And so my entire life, I've been so oblivious to the fact that I was a minority until people started pointing it out. And I was like, oh, wait, okay, fine. Maybe this is a challenge then that I was unaware I was tackling, but I just got on with it. And so I think I was just raised to just get on with it. If you see a problem, find a solution, and get on with it and try your best. I also think with respect to the IPO, if you had told me now to IPO a company onto the LSE, I would tell you that's a very scary thought. But I think, 13 years ago, I was young and foolish. And so when people say that's never been done, I'm like, and? So
yeah.
The reaction of, being younger and not being able to see all the inherent risks allows you to have the courage to do things that now I would say that's fraught with risk.
But I mean, sometimes it takes to be young and foolish, I guess, to take these decisions, right? I mean, because you don't.
Absolutely.
That perception of risk hasn't been developed to a point that would make you risk averse of any sort. And around that period, Noor, I don't know, correct me if I was wrong, but was it around that period when you also decided to get into the yoga business? Like you wanted to start your like yoga studio, and you were also doing this entrepreneurial venture on the side. Was it a side thing?
So yeah, so that was my project. So I've always been into yoga since 2000 when there was one yoga studio in Boston.
Yeah.
And I started my practice then and really enjoyed it. Found it was instrumental to my good health. And so when I moved back here a year later, I, was very frustrated with the fact that my practice was dwindling. Streaming didn't exist back then, right? You couldn't just go online and find a yoga class and log in. And so I decided to do, the next best thing, which was, well, if there are no studios, I can't be the only person in town that wants one. And I mistakenly thought that being that I'm in family business, I wasn't going to work that hard. Big mistake. I worked harder than I have my entire life until now. And so I thought, well, how hard can it be? Let me just open a yoga studio. And I had a typical kind of entrepreneur mindset of, again, young and entrepreneurial and foolish. Okay, I just, rent the space, open a studio, get 2 yoga teachers. And then a couple of weeks before we opened the studio, it occurred to me that there are no yoga teachers in Dubai, obviously, because there are no yoga studios. So it kind of made sense in hindsight, right? And so, okay, what do I do now? So I got 2 teachers to move over from the States and open the studio with me. And it was a lot of fun. And it was literally because I just thought I can't be the only person in town that wants to practice yoga. And it's really good for everyone. Let's try to create this market. And it's a nice weekend project for me to have.
Weekend project.
And that just grew. Within 4 years, we were 6,000 students a month, 72 teachers, the Yoga Alliance certification across the region. It kind of became a business by itself.
That is crazy. I mean, it's honestly crazy to think that Dubai never had, you look at it now and it's such a lifestyle city. There's everything for everyone, right? I mean, especially yoga. That's so mainstream now. So it's hard to imagine a reality where Dubai actually never had a yoga studio to begin with.
15 years ago. It was a long time ago.
That's crazy. And I'm in one of your interviews, you mentioned that opening or running that yoga studio was harder than leading the IPO of your family business. In what sense was that the case?
I think, right, I was running, part of the team on two fronts. One part of the yoga team. So we had a general manager who ran the day to day. And at the same time, part of this team running this $1 billion company. And at night, when all was said and done and you're winding down a day and making dinner or having dinner, and the things that are on your mind and keep you up at night. And it was the yoga teachers, the schedules, the little things that you needed to always keep up with. How do you grow your business? How do you drive more traffic? Why is retention falling? So the operating entrepreneurial day-to-day things that come with typical, even if you have 95% customer satisfaction, you still have 10 very angry people every day that have come out of your studios. So when you think about just the numbers and the magnitude, and so really, and then it was impossible to raise money because no one at the time invested in young businesses. And I had learned that money or capital preceded growth. And so we'd want to open two more studios, but we need capital because the down payments in Dubai, you have to pay 6 months in advance rent and all these checks and the fit out. And I was like, wait, this is so much in terms of investment. And then you get that money back over 3 years, but had those moments where it's easier to raise. We took in $420 million at our IPO. We raised that in 2 weeks with some great banks, like investment banks, but we couldn't raise $2 million to grow Zen Yoga. And so those were the day-to-day challenges that you have as a founder, and the lack of access to capital that founders have that really impeded our ability to grow the business.
That it makes sense how you just decided to enter the VC space. That makes sense. Looking back at your story.
Well, it wasn't really called VC at the time. I just
like
figured let me help others. Like once I was done, let me help others overcome the obstacles I struggled with.
Yeah, I respect how you're able to manage these different things and wear these be those different roles and wear these different hats. I'm curious as to how Noor organizes her days and weeks. I mean, are there any tools or systems that you have that help you become more focused or organized during your weeks?
There's a few. I think for me, it's largely meditation. So it's yoga, it's meditation, it's pausing. I talk very quickly. I think very quickly, and sometimes it's important for me to stand before a meeting, to just stand behind the door and just slow down, and then come in, and that just helps me focus. Just take 1 or 2 deep breaths.
Yeah,
it's important to focus. I'm an early riser.
Nice.
I discovered the importance of high intensity exercise about 7 years ago. And that stayed with me.
Yeah. And that's efficient as well.
It's efficient, but more interestingly, it actually ups your IQ game for the rest of the day. So I was reading a lot of research about how high intensity exercise first thing in the morning, training, heavyweight training, whether it's boxing, whether it's tennis, actually improves your IQ by 15% for the rest of the day. It makes you that much more focused. And so I'm like, wait, so I get that hour back just in terms of efficiency. I'm thinking it becomes a good investment.
Yeah.
So plus I really enjoy it. So I'm an adrenaline junkie. And for me, that's just part of who I am.
Nice. Is that related to the fact that I did read somewhere that it's because our cortisol level, our stress hormone levels are the highest in the morning, and workout helps take that down, and that helps with focus?
Maybe. I find that I just do my best thinking when I'm training.
Yeah, me too.
I walk out of those sessions having solved the biggest problems of the day. I just need to pause it then first. So in the morning, I'm like, what do I need to solve for? And then I don't think about it. And it's almost like it gets solved subconsciously while you're doing your exercise.
I love that. I love that you also meditate. I'm big on meditation myself. Today, you're the founder and managing partner of Global Ventures, one of the most successful in the region. Now I know how you transitioned into that, given your story and the fact that you just understood the value of access to funding in the region, and you just wanted to help people. It wasn't even called venture capital, you mentioned back in the day. So my question is, now that you've exercised your investor muscle, you rub shoulders with a lot of founders and you vet a lot of startups, you're exposed to that industry. What do you look for in founders? Or maybe it's either this question, or what are some red flags that you try to avoid when you're trying to evaluate an opportunity to invest in?
There's a lot. There's a lot of red flags. There's a lot of green signs. We at Global Ventures back mission-driven founders. So we'll look for people who are literally on a mission to make the world a better place. And that can be through health tech, ed tech, fintech. It can be through something as simple as a company like Shopify in Saudi, which we invested in, called Zed. But if you take a look at what that does on a gender parity level, it's important. So when you think about the founders themselves, there are those that wake up in the morning and are pursuing a valuation, and there are those that wake up in the morning and are trying to create value. And for us, that is fundamental. And the way you create value in this part of the world can be job growth, can be access to healthcare, can be access to financial inclusion. There's so many ways to create value. We live in a part of the world with 40% unemployment in our youth. And so when we think about what will these people be doing and how can we help them do that, a large part of where our capital goes is driven by when we sit with the founder, why did they get up in the morning? Being a founder is really hard work. Why are they doing what they're doing? Are they driven by value or by valuation?
Nice. I like that. And honestly, you guys are playing a huge role in enabling innovation because you are adopting these ideas, you're providing platform for these companies to scale and grow, and you're spurring innovation. So, I mean, I respect that space. I respect that sector. What are some of the proudest success stories or exits, or the most recent one? I know that two big ones happened over the summer, which is incredible. Congrats for that.
We have had, yes. And then one happened 2 weeks ago and we had another one last week. So we've had 4 exits out of our first fund, which has always been a struggle for us because people say, the region has great investment opportunities, but are there really exits? And my answer has always been driven, well, I personally participated in 2 exits, one as an IPO and the other as private equity. And I believe in exits in venture. And so when we first started Fund 1, it was very much, I believe this. I was trying to convince people to believe with me. And now we've had 4 exits in 4 months out of Fund 1 at an average of a 6x multiple on our money. So, and the founders have gone on and are still doing their thing and are doing incredibly well. We're so proud of them. And it gets to a point where for us, it's important to prove that exits exist because then people will put that capital back into the ecosystem and there's more capital going in because there's more exits. And so you really increase the amount of available capital to founders across the region.
Nice. I know of Kotopi exiting and raising over $400 million over the summer. There's Mom's World also that got acquired. What are the 2 most recent ones over the past 2 weeks you mentioned?
I don't think they're public.
Oh, okay, fine. That's fine.
The team will be upset with me if I mention them.
That's cool. I like that you're teasing it.
By the time this is aired, they will be public and people can search.
Great. I'd feel like I had the insider scoop before it goes public.
There you go.
Awesome. So let's, Hika, before we wrap up this conversation with my 3 rapid fire questions, a few more personal questions that I would like to ask to give us more insight on Noor. So there's a segment in the podcast I like to call Shift Happens. And it's this idea that we often go through our lives and there's always this one day, one moment that changes us or shifts us or changes the trajectory of our professional or personal lives. Is there any moment or such a thing for you that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think there's so many, right? So I'm trying to pick one. So I think, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I was pre-law, wanted to go to law school, and then I've had a moment where I had professors say, if you don't love studying the law, you're going to hate practicing it. And I literally looked down at what I was reading, and I was like, "This is miserable." So woke up the next day and was like, "Not going to be a lawyer next." And so that was kind of my first, career course life change. And then, deciding that I was not going to go back to Booz Allen and was going to stay in the family business was another, a huge shift. And then IPOing, deciding, and taking that decision and that step. So along the journey, many.
I bet. So what is the learning from you deciding not to pursue law? What is that learning? How do you always use that learning in your decisions today?
I don't think of anything as an investment. I think of things as a sunk cost. So that time that I spent studying law before I decided not to, a lot of people are like, well, you're this far down. Are you really going to change now? And if you see things like that as an investment, then effectively you throw good time after bad, like you throw good money after bad. As opposed to, okay, I learned a lot. It's a sunk cost. It's not going to happen. But what can I take from that into my next part of my journey? And that applies every time, right? So when I left consulting, it wasn't like, oh my God, I've spent so long consulting and I'm walking away from this career ladder, and right. And therefore you stay in the next year because you see it all as an investment, as opposed to I've learned so much. Thank you. Let's see where I can use what I've learned now. And so seeing it kind of like a sunk cost, but also, a chapter finished
Yeah.
rather than an investment.
Yeah. It's crazy that you say that. And people who listen to this podcast probably know that about me. And it's funny you also mention sunk cost, because in one of my podcast interviews with Michael Layani, the founder of Property Finder, we exactly talk about this topic. And I exactly reference law. And I talk about how my lawyer friends sometimes, although they hate their careers, they're refusing to let go just because they think that they've invested so much that it's too late for them to just drop that career and move to something else. And in my head, I'm like, look at it as a sunk cost. I completely agree with
There's
this.
a great book about this. So you'll know, because on other podcasts, people say, "What are you reading now?"
What are you reading now
is different. But there was a great book that we just gave to all our founders. So every quarter, we give all our founders and team a book to read, because I think it's a good way to keep the mind open. The one that we gave recently was called Range. I'm not sure if you've read it.
No.
It's by David Epstein. It came out about 2 years ago, and it talks about the importance of range in your career. So the fact that you've been a lawyer for 10 years or 15 years is actually the best thing you can do when you go to do your startup or your next thing, right? And so having the range of experiences and the breadth of experiences. And he compares, it's really interesting because he compares, Tiger Woods with Federer, and how Tiger was, from when he was 3 years old, started playing golf, and everyone knows that story, and early specialization is key, and specializing is very important, and that principle, versus Roger Federer, who started playing tennis at 14 and became the world's longest champion, right? And it was before that he had played lots of different sports, he had learned different things, and how he brought those into the learning of tennis, and how people who specialize in stage but specialized have a very different career path and life path than those that have a lot of range, and then from one industry or from one experience bring learnings into another. And that's a very unique value proposition.
Well, I'm definitely reading that book. So you mentioned when you started your yoga, what kept you up at night, where your employees and like all those customer reviews. What keeps you up at night tonight? I mean, not tonight. What keeps you up at night today, these days?
I think that the fact that there's just so much to do, right? So telling the founder stories, making sure that we're building a platform that gives them kind of a global stage, to really write a second narrative or another narrative for the region, to give them the opportunities that other people in other parts of the world that have more access to capital have, and to showcase that we can build anything from here.
I bet you can. Before we move to our rapid fire questions, is there anything else that people don't know about you? Nothing. You're an open book.
I'm an open book.
Awesome. Before we end this conversation, I've got these 3 rapid fire questions. Just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when I tell you the question. The first one is, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
To stay excited.
To stay excited. It's hard sometimes. What tip or hack would you give anyone out there who has an inspiration, a goal, and they're trying to achieve it? They're trying to move one day closer to that goal, but something is blocking them. Any tip, hack that would get them closer to that thing they're trying to accomplish?
To take a vacation.
Take a break. Nice.
Take a break. Take a vacation. Step away. You get so much more perspective.
Yeah.
Anytime that I feel stuck, rather than spend more time trying to solve the problem, I find that the answer lies in taking a break and stepping away. Because a different part of your brain starts working.
Yeah.
You can only be creative once you're away from something. When you're in it, you become very tactical.
Yeah, I agree. Finally, what is that one thing you wish to accomplish one day? And you could start the sentence with one day I.
One day I want to go to space.
Oof. Nice. Big dreams, big ambitions.
It'd be fun. In my lifetime, it should be possible.
Well, I mean, your record proves that anything you put your mind to, you can achieve. Honestly, a true visionary leader who just goes after the challenge with an unstoppable mindset. Noor, it was great to have you on the One Day podcast. This conversation was insightful, packed with great business advice, and really inspiring. Where can people follow you or follow the work that you do with global ventures or whatever you're up to?
On LinkedIn, both Global Ventures and me personally, and then on Instagram and Twitter on Global Ventures.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Noor.
Thank you so much, Ahmed.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you were able to pick up a thing or two that could help you in business or life. If you would like to hear more conversations like these and you're not yet a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe through your preferred podcast platform. And follow us on Instagram at oneday.thepodcast. And you could reach me on my personal Instagram account at @o_almajali. And last but not least, if you prefer to watch the full episode on video, then you can do so on our YouTube channel, One Day the Podcast. Till next time.